In this video, we're going to see some examples of writing overloaded methods in Java. So let's say I want to write a method that takes a string and a number and then prints the string that many times. So that'll be a void method. We'll call it just doSomething. So it's going to take a string and an int, and it's going to print the string that many times. So not super interesting, but it does something. So now, suppose instead I have some sort of measurement. I'm going to use that to determine what I should do. And so I'll say something like if, I'll just say math.py, which is sort of a random thing to compare it to, but that's what we use here. And if it's less than that number, then we'll print the string. And then otherwise, we'll actually print the string 3 times. And so we can call our overloaded method. So even though these have the same name, Java will know which one we're referring to. And what that means is we can call the overloaded methods inside one of the other overloaded methods. There's no problem to doing this. And again, that's what we want to do. This method does it, so we'll call it here. So let's test that. And so we'll say CSC 110. Now we'll pass it a double. So we'll say 3.0. And then let's just test that it works. And we'll say 4.0. So if I run that, just to make sure we can tell the two things apart, we'll say test 1 and test 2. And you can see we have test 1 that prints 1 because the input was less than pi. But then we print when the input was greater than pi, we do it 3 times. We can have something completely even unrelated here for our overloaded methods. So we could do something like 2 strings as our parameter. And it doesn't, oh, I forgot to say void there. And in this case, we'll just print the 2 strings. So let me put a new line in between these. So this is our call to do something with a string and an int. So here's do something with a string and a double. And then we'll do something with a string and a string. And so here, when we print this out, you can see it's going to call the appropriate method. So we have 3 different ways that we can call a method with the same name. Now, when you do something like this, you want to make sure that your overloaded methods do something similar. So here, in each case, we're printing what's in the string each time. So the string is getting printed. So do something is going to print a string. It's just a matter of, is it going to print it multiple times? Is it going to do a comparison to see how many times to print? Or is it going to print 2 separate strings? And so that's something that you want to keep in mind. You don't want these to be completely unrelated things that are being done because the methods all have the same name, but you can have a different number or type of parameters. And also notice here, I guess they all have 2 methods. So I didn't do one with a different number. So maybe to start off with, I'll just do a very simple one with just a string, and we'll print out the string with some dashes. So then when I come down here, and I can say overloaded methods. I'm going to call the one that just takes a single string, and then we'll see when we run this, there's our example. So again, Java will know which method to call based on the number and types of methods. So all of them take a string. I could, if I wanted, have one that took an integer. That's not a problem. But they all do take a string. This only takes a string. And then in this case, we have a string and an integer, a string and a double, and we have a 4th version with a string and a string. So why would we give multiple methods the same name? Because you have a situation where you have the numerical method, you may want to be able to handle an integer or a double. So that's one way you can do that with overloaded methods. In these cases, we're doing a similar thing in each method. We're doing some sort of print. And then how we're doing that actual printing depends on the parameters. And so we're going to do different things based on the different parameters, but ultimately what we're doing is the same type of thing. We're printing a string based on some criteria. So in the first case, we just surround the string with some dashes. In the second, we print it a specified number of times. In this case, depending on this measured value, we print it once or 3 times. Again, we make a decision with something else. And then finally down here, we have 2 strings. And so in that case, if there's 2 strings, we just print both strings. This is a little bit of a toy example, but where this could come up, especially, is going to be in the next module when we talk about classes and creating classes. Classes have a special method called a constructor. That constructor sets up the object. And so you may want to set up that object in different ways depending on the needs of the client. And an overloaded constructor method gives you that ability. So that would be another real world example. And probably that's where we're going to be using overloaded methods the most. Overloaded methods are something that exists, that it's important that you understand that the type of the parameter and the number of parameters means you have a different method. So even though the name is the same, these 2 calls are going to be to different methods. And so that is a quick overview of overloading methods.